Tellinger, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Russell. Just caught me taking a sip of my cup of tea that I've made myself just before you came online.
Michael Tellinger has been a longtime scientist and researcher of the origins of humankind and the genetic anomalies of our species. He is a supporter of Zecharia Sitchin and believes man was created using alien DNA to terraform and mine gold on Earth for the Anunnaki. He has written several books including Temples of the African Gods, Slave Species of the Gods, The Secret History of the Anunnaki and Their Mission on Earth, and his latest, African Temples of the Anunnaki, The Lost Technology of the Gold Mines of Enki. Michael Tellinger connects the dots and reveals why humanity is enslaved through the suppression of free energy alternatives and what he calls the absolute tool of control, money. You can learn more about Michael Tellinger's research by visiting michaeltellinger.com. Now, for all you nitwits out there who are about to ask yourselves whether or not he's got a British accent or an Australian one, it's neither, but in fact...
South African, very much.
Right. And you're currently in South Africa?
I am. I'm sitting in my balcony study overlooking the mountains of Mpumalanga, which are absolutely filled to the brim by the ancient ruins left behind by the Anunnaki.
And I'm here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and this conversation, I suppose, is because of alien technology.
Absolutely. And for those people that have not yet read UFO Highway, which is a relatively new book, I highly recommend it. It'll certainly give you a slightly different spin on where we seem to have gotten a lot of our technology from in recent days.
That's Anthony F. Sanchez.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine. Michael, let's start with the basics to the theory behind Nibiru and the Anunnaki, so anyone who isn't yet familiar with it can be brought up to speed. A primer, if you will. And is there a special connection between the Anunnaki and South Africa?
Very much so. You know, you said up front that I'm a supporter of Zecharia Sitchin, and I think many people, millions of people around the world will resonate with that. That there are many detractors of Zecharia Sitchin's work and so forth. So I'd like to just put all these detractors' fears to rest, because there can be no more discussion or doubt about what Sitchin's interpretations were about and the fact that they were actually true. Not all of his interpretations and his translations were true. Everybody makes mistakes. But what we do know now is that what he wrote about Southern Africa, or a place called the Abzu, often misinterpreted by some scholars as hell or the land below earth, which really, I believe, the true interpretation was the land below the equator where the gold came from, and also the places below the earth where the gold was dug. So the fact that we have now uncovered about or more than 10 million mysterious circular stone structures that create a huge network, ancient network of an ancient civilization here in Southern Africa, which includes South Africa and Zimbabwe, that there can be no more doubt that this must have indeed been the so-called Abzu, or the place where the gold came from. And I must also add to that, there's overwhelming evidence that these ancient civilizations, or these vanished civilizations that left all these structures behind, were in fact digging gold and mining gold. The Sumerian tablets talk about the Anunnaki gods, and as Zecharia Sitchin correctly actually called them the Anunnaki, the gods of heaven and earth, because that is what they call themselves. And the Sumerian clay tablets are riddled with references of the Anunnaki gods and what they did on earth, their activities. The two main protagonists or activators among the Anunnaki gods, or the Anunnaki, who came from a planet called Nibiru, according to Sitchin and his translations, came to Earth some 450,000 years ago looking for gold. And they found it in great quantities. And they started digging it. After they realized that they needed more gold and they were able to dig out, for reasons that remain mysterious and debatable, they decided to clone a new species, a slave species, which they refer to as the Lulu Amelu, or the primitive worker. And to create this new species, knowing the techniques of cloning the way we know it today, they used what seems to be a basic hominid species, possibly something like a Homo erectus, and then another advanced kind of being, either themselves or another advanced being that may have already been present on planet Earth at that stage. And they created this new species called Homo sapien. that doesn't mean that the Homo sapien they created is what Homo sapiens look like today, because there's been many crossbreeding episodes and many more genetic manipulations since that first genetic cloning event. And that is why we have this interesting situation of so many different race groups on our planet. And that in itself is an interesting anomaly to face growing up on this planet. So the Anunnaki came to planet Earth from a planet called Nibiru, which, according to Sitchin and his translations, revolves around the sun every 3,600 years, and there are some interesting connotations or connections to that. Why we have 360 degrees in a circle or an orb in geometry, and from that sense. Zecharia Sitchin is not the only one that has been writing about the Anunnaki and their quest for gold on planet Earth. There have been many other psychics and channelers and seers that have given us great amounts of information, and Ashiana Dean is just one such other person that talks in great detail about the Anunnaki. And I must also tell your listeners at this stage that we cannot underestimate the incredible influence the Anunnaki have had not only on this planet and our species as the human race, on the activities on this planet, not just for hundreds of thousands of years, but actually millions of years, most likely. But not only on this planet or in our solar system, but on the entire galaxy and the entire universe as we know it today. This is becoming more and more evident the more you dig into the activities of the Anunnaki. In fact, for those that have seen or that will see my latest presentation from the Breakthrough Energy Conference in Boulder, Colorado in October 2013, we'll see how I present the evidence of this energy grid that was created around planet Earth and was put in place by the Anunnaki. We now have measurements that we've started making of this energy grid by individual scientists and researchers that have got the technique and the technology to do that. But this information has already been known by the American military and Air Force for decades, this energy grid around planet Earth that they've been referring to as the rules, this energy grid that they call the rules. They often say they don't know where it comes from, but it's always been there.
What are some of the misconceptions about Nibiru or the Anunnaki? I mean, the Internet has many contradictory stories.
Yeah, one of the first misconceptions is that they're reptilians, and I must tell you that Anunnaki are not reptilian. What seems to have happened is, when you start, what I must also just, warn against or guide against is, don't just believe everything you read, as you said. The easiest way to tell a lie is to stick as close to the truth as possible. So just do as much research and read as much as you can, and you'll realize that the Anunnaki are definitely not reptilian beings, but they've been connected to the reptilians for other reasons, which could be linked to the split within the Anunnaki hierarchy and pecking order. And it seems when one of Enki's sons by the name of Marduk, who is a huge following on Earth, and it's still possible that he's actually running the affairs on this planet. He's actually the big cheese that runs all the affairs on this planet and controls all the governments. When Marduk split away from the senior Anunnaki and remained on Earth and took control of the affairs here, and he then went into all kinds of deals and agreements with the Draconians and the Reptilians, and started taking control and enslaving humanity, which was not necessarily the initial intention of Enki and Enlil, the senior Anunnaki brothers that sort of set up the gold mining empire here on Earth, and created the split. Many call it the angelic, or the fallen angelics would refer to that. So those are some of the main misconceptions and the very thin line between what may have happened and what could have happened and didn't happen.
Why would the Anunnaki create the human race to mine gold? With their advanced technology, couldn't they just have mined it for themselves?
Of course you can mine gold for yourself. Well, put yourself in a position where you've got great Caesar and laser technology, and you can dig the gold out of the ground, but how much gold are you going to dig if there's 20 or 30 or 60 of you, right? not much, even if you have advanced Caesar and laser technology. But if you have 10 million people doing it, you're digging a lot more gold than just 60 of you. So that is why it's a common question I get, and the answers are very simple. You don't fool yourselves. Let's not fool ourselves for 1 second that just because we get advanced technology, and that in itself is a very interesting discussion. What is advanced technology actually? Just because you get advanced technology doesn't mean you can do things on a mass scale under certain limitations, or within a specific environment that dictates specific limitations. And there I speak about the dense reality and the dense environment of consciousness and the dense field that we find ourselves on this planet, the reality we find ourselves in here.
Right, but could they not have just cloned themselves? Why the need to create a hybrid?
Well, they didn't want to do the work. There was a rebellion that's very clearly outlined in Sitchin's work. When the Anunnaki were digging the gold for thousands of years, they didn't just do this and give up within a day or two. They did it for thousands of years until they said, sorry, we've had enough. We're not going to do this hard labor, because they were putting some of their own kind into really treacherous mining conditions. And if you've ever been underground into a mine, you know what I mean. It is not a pleasant place to be. So when their own kind refused to do the work, they realized that they would have to find an alternative to the solution, or to the problem. And the solution was to create a clone, a new species that was smart enough to follow orders, but not smart enough to question its own existence and its own consciousness. It had to have a big enough frontal lobe to follow instructions and follow orders and learn how to handle tools and repeat it over and over again, and also be of high consciousness or conscience to understand fear and to understand the threat of punishment and what would happen to you if you do not follow orders, that you will be punished. And so the enslavement, the creation of the species is really a lot more complex than people would just imagine. It's not something that you just do overnight. Say, oh, we just create a species and they'll do what we tell them to do. It's not that simple. It's obviously, and according to Sitchin's writings, it took them a long time to get the right mix, the right genetic mix, to create the right kind of creature that would perform all these tasks and be the right kind of slave. And boy, did they get it right. Look at us today.
We have an audience contributed question here. On a lot of the Sumerian tablets, the Anunnaki characters all